everybody, Andrew Cuneo here. Thought I'd make a video about a deck I've been trying in the new Standard. I haven't played Standard in, I don't know, 6 months maybe, so I was not really familiar with what it was like before rotation, but I have been trying it a little bit since rotation. As far as I can tell, most of the decks are either like black mid-range decks that have between like a modest amount of discard and a lot of discard, or they're some sort of red prowess deck that's either mono red or red green. I guess I've also seen red blue. And there's also like the red white tokens Knight Captain of Eos deck. So anyway, I tried this deck, which is completely different. This is a deck where your main game plan is to just mill your opponent out with Jace the Perfected Mind. And in order to facilitate that, you have Deadly Cover-Up in the end, both of which allow you to exile kind of key cards from your opponent's deck as the game goes on. Also, you do support the milling a little bit with Restless Reef, but this card is not actually particularly good because you don't have any creatures in your deck, so a lot of the times you're just going to animate it and your opponent's going to use a card that was sitting in their hand not doing anything to kill it. So I don't have 4 Restless Reefs in my deck for that reason, because it's not all that good all that often, to be honest. Filling out the rest of the deck, I've got 1 Virtue of Persistence. I've got more on the sideboard, which I'll get to in a second, but this is, just a little bit more removal. And some decks, like if you just stall the game out and you resolve this, you're guaranteed to win. You don't need to mill them out. The 4 Jaces, like I said, this is basically the main way that the main deck wins. Then we get to some of the more interesting choices. So I have 4 Deduce, which I think is the best blue card drawing spell that's legal right now. And then 2 Quick Studies. I also tried Silver Scrutiny for a while, which is a card I would really like it to be good, but I think it's just worse than Quick Study, sadly. You want at least this level of card drawing against the black discard decks, I would say. 4 Go for the Throats. I'm pretty sure this is the best 2-mana removal spell. There's also a new one that it's like 2 mana, you kill a creature or a planeswalker, but you have to forage for it to be 2 mana, or you can spend 3 mana to do it. I could see maybe a mix of this and whatever that card is, and then 3 Cut Downs is just a great card. The counters, I've got 4 copies of this new card, Long River's Pull, which is Essence Scatter, or if you want it to be more than Essence Scatter, you have to give them a card. So obviously, if you're putting this in your deck, you're mostly hoping to cast it to counter creatures, and then it's just got this kind of escape clause so that it's useful in spots where your opponent's creatures aren't really what you care about. So far, I found this to be a pretty good card. The double blue is a little bit of an issue, but there's a lot of really good dual lands in Standard now, so I don't know that you need to live in fear of being able to get double blue. Like, if you look at my mana base, sometimes I won't have double blue on turn 2, but I'm going to have double blue a lot of the time on turn 2, and, turn 3 or 4, certainly it should be online. And if that isn't the case, maybe you should have mulliganed. 4 copies of 3 Steps Ahead. This is another really good counter. I mean, at 3 mana counter spell, it's not great, but when you get to the 5 mana mode where it's like counter, draw 2, discard 1, that is a really strong card, especially against the black decks where it's really just a kind of a slog to get ahead on cards. And so you want as many cards as possible that are going to give you card advantage there so that you can just fight through all the Duresses and the Bats. And then there's a bunch of new cards that I don't know the name of that make you discard 1 card at a time. So you just need like a bunch of 2-for-1s. I played for a while with just 4 Deduces and 4 3 Steps Ahead and no Quick Studies, and I felt like it wasn't enough against the black decks. Then moving on to the sideboard, we'll see I actually have 2 more Quick Studies, which those are in my sideboard specifically to board in against the black discard decks. Also, if you play against a deck similar to this, like some sort of similar blue control deck, you'd want to go up to 4 Quick Studies. It's just a really good card in any sort of a mirror. Then we get to some of the more interesting part of the sideboard. So I think that against the black decks, this like mill them out plan is a pretty strong plan. Against the red prowess decks, it's not actually that good of a plan. That's where I board in all my Sheoldreds and these additional copies of Virtue of Persistence. And actually, in those against the prowess decks, I also just board in all of my Duresses, because like they're, in addition to being a creature deck, they have a lot of non-creature cards in their deck, and they're also probably going to have a small number of cards post sideboarding that can kill your Sheoldred. Even if they know the Sheoldred's coming, they're not going to have like 10 answers to it. They're going to have 4 or 5 answers to it. So if you can get just a hand where you duress them and then play a Sheoldred, it's going to live a lot of the time, and it'll be enough to win games. Even though I said I haven't played Standard in a while, I still see some of the online discords where people are like, why do people complain about Sheoldred? It's not even like in that high percentage of decks. And the reason that this card is not that heavily played is that it is so good against the decks where it's good that like those decks almost just cannot exist in Standard, just because if they have to play against Sheoldred like 10% of the time, they have no shot of winning those matches. I really think this card is just oppressively good. Like there are a bunch of kind of creature-based tribal strategies almost I'd like to try, and you can just never build a tribal deck that has any hope of beating Sheoldred. It's just a ridiculous card. 2 copies of the Stonebrain. I would say this is these are like the last 2 cards in the sideboard. I don't know that there's any decks where this is particularly good. It's just kind of, it's on theme, so I figured I'd play with it for a while to see if there's any matchups where I really like it. So far, I haven't seen any of those. If you wanted to make room for like a 4th Sheoldred, you could certainly cut a Stonebrain. Also, 2 Glistening Deluges. This is against the like the white tokens deck primarily. If you wanted more Glistening Deluges to make that matchup better, I would cut a Stonebrain. 1 Mirrex. This is primarily if you play against other blue decks. I think that Mirrex remains like one of the best and most annoying cards in any sort of blue mirror. I don't have any in my main deck. I just have the 1 in my sideboard because I don't think blue decks are that popular. I guess I didn't really talk about the construction of the lands. This is a straight blue-black deck, so you have a lot of options for dual lands. It's really just a matter of like how many tapped lands do you want to play. So I'm playing all 4 Undercity Sewers. I think that like the Surveil ability on the tapped land is pretty strong. Only 2 Restless Reefs, like I said. I think this one's worse than Undercity Sewers just because your deck doesn't have any creatures in it. So, you're kind of giving them a target for cards that wouldn't be otherwise useful a lot of the time. 4 Darkslick Shores. I think this one's just really good. Obviously, it's going to come into play tapped some of the time in this deck because this deck you're going to tend to play long games, and it's going to come into play tapped on turn 5 sometimes, and it's going to be annoying. But having like access to the correct colors of mana on turn 2 or turn 1 for like cut down, so you can go cut down into Long River's Pull is just too important. So I think you want 4 of those. 4 Demolition Fields. There are a lot of creature lands, and there's the Restless cycle, and then there's also Mirrex and Fountainport, which that's why you're playing all these Demolition Fields, is to get those. Also, and this is like kind of a subtle thing where you are removing a card from your opponent's deck when you activate this, which gets you closer to just, killing people with Jace. And you can mill people out from pretty substantial number of cards left in their deck. Like if you happen to just have 2 Jaces, milling 30 cards in 1 turn is not crazy on like turn 10 of the game. So obviously like the thing where you're making their deck 1 card smaller when you Demolition Field them and they get a land is not going to matter all that often, but every once in a while it might. 2 Fabled Passages. This is, again, I just wanted more ways to make my colored mana work, and this is like a dual land it's a tapped land on turns 1 through 3, and then it's an untapped land. I've been pretty happy with this mix of lands. Obviously, if you wanted to, you could play even more dual lands. I don't have any of the Pain lands in my deck, and I'm not maxed out on Restless Reefs or Fabled Passages. I suppose, in theory, if you wanted to, you could add another color. I don't know that there's anything that I would want all that badly from another color. I guess the one thing that is potentially a problem I have not solved is the red decks usually board in Urabrask's Forge against you, and that is a pretty annoying card, but generally Sheoldred beats Urabrask's Forge if you resolve the Sheoldred and the game isn't like too far gone. The Sheoldred just like it pretty badly outraces an Urabrask's Forge if your opponent doesn't have anything else going on, and you don't start at like immediately dead the turn you resolve the Sheoldred. So that Sheoldred's really the plan against Urabrask's Forge. That and duressing it out of their hand. So that's the deck. Let's play a couple matches. I'm always so happy when I just have Deduce in my opening hand. I'm really sure why people put that card in their deck. I guess if you want a black 1-drop, you don't have any options, but it really does not seem like a very strong card. Like it's kind of, I mean, it's kind of a 2-power 1-drop in this situation, which I guess is nice. And later on in the game, you can spring it, so it's not quite as embarrassing. Oh, does it trigger? I guess it commits crimes. One damage to target opponent. Yeah, it does crime. I guess that makes it a little bit more reasonable. I don't want this land. Yeah, I guess my hand is so good. I want to make sure I make all my land drops. Sad I haven't gotten to cast Deduce yet. I'm just gonna untap and play Jace. And I'm set up to probably Deadly Cover Up. Next turn. Maybe not. I'm not quite to the point where I can collect evidence on the Deadly Cover Up. Which that's not the most important thing in the world, but it is, you know, nice if you get to do it. Also, you just get to look at your opponent's hand, which makes it easier to play. So, investigating. This is kind of cool. I guess what they got going on. Probably get rid of the hot shot investigators out of their deck. Gix's Command and Divine Lashers. They have the Hellraiser. And they've got this Warlock. This is like I said, the black decks just always have so much discard in them. And then they got this thing too. Wow. Alright. I guess I am potentially powering up their Gix's Command. So that's maybe not the best thing in the world, but I suppose. Oh, they're going to get a lot of triggers with the Demolition Field too. That's nice.
Organic minds are easily quelled.
Whoops. Tap the land is about to go away. It actually might matter. Right, because I can go Deduce, investigate, and I would have been able to have 2 mana untapped for Long River's Fall. If I had played it, or whatever, what's the card called? It's the Long River's Pull. I suppose suppose that makes more sense as a name. Another Demolition Field. They're kind of making this Vine Lasher work. So they... Didn't they have put counters on the Vine Lasher? Were they worried? I should have done that response. Yeah, they could have just put counters on the Vine Lasher. There's nothing bad can happen. With the way targeting works.
We can improve upon your ideas.
It's kind of rude that I know this thing. So I do the end on the Vine Lasher, they get to draw a card. I guess it's probably worth it. Probably should have done that on my turn. I was going to do it. No, that sort of works out better for me. So now I think they're going to play into the...
What curious behavior.
Deadly cover up. I think they'll probably negotiate with me. Okay, the Vine Lasher, and I'll discard this island and then cut down the bat. It would actually be even better if they just played another creature here. I guess what they're just leaving their mana up so that they can Demolition Field me. There's no reason in my deck that it matters what I collect evidence. I guess, in theory, they could have some cards of exiles from my graveyard. I set my lands more carefully. I think I still have an island left in my deck, so it doesn't really matter. It's probably a situation where I should have got the dual land to start. Because I knew they were going to do that. What are they left with? They're left with 2 Hellraisers, which are kind of scary. Yeah, they still have a lot of creatures in their deck, actually. I'm in a pretty good spot, obviously, because I've got a Planeswalker and they're essentially just playing off the top of their deck, but it's not impossible to lose.
can be made to obey.
I think I want to use this in my hand to buffer the Ruthless Negotiation. It's possible I played it, they were just going to cast the Ruthless Negotiation on their turn anyway. But if I play it and then they don't play the Negotiation and then I draw a card I want to keep in my hand, it works out really badly for me. I'm getting one card. Minus there.
Our plans are beyond your comprehension.
See, this is one of those playing against a black decks. You really can't have too little card draw. I think I've drawn 2 Deduces this game, and I haven't drawn any 3 steps ahead.
How foolish.
That's a pretty good draw step I've got left in my deck.
Organic minds are easily quelled.
I didn't look to see if they have the green-black Restless land, but it seems like they surely must have it.
Easily be solved for. Heal.
I don't think they're beating this Virtue of Persistence. I don't usually board in more Virtue of Persistences against green-black decks, but I think against this particular deck it's actually pretty good. But what don't I like? Kind of part of the problem is I actually like all my cards. How much do I like cut down the head? The bats. They're those stupid 1/2s that I don't care about those that much. Kind of tempted just to do that. Guess that card's okay. I definitely don't want to draw more lands, so I suppose it's fine to keep this. This is not the ideal card. Getting hit by the Warlock. If they're the Warlock here, it'd be pretty nasty. I think that's what it's called, the 2/2.
Surrender your mind to Phyrexia's will. Become
Trying to buy some life total. should have boarded in Glistening Deluge.
Surrender.
They do have a bunch of green 3 toughness things. But I think it also gets after read
no
Glistening
secret
Deluge again.
escapes my grasp.
So I might as well. Like if they Duress, they still screw me with Duress if they play it post-combat and they can either take the go for the throat or if they play the go for the throat, they take the deadly cover up. I guess if they had the thought picker 2/2 is called, that would have been bad for me, but again, I don't know if there's anything I could do about it. I think I'm gonna get rid of the Line Lashers. Gotten so low. Don't want to take any more chip damage. I could also get rid of the Giza Hellraiser, but I don't think they have that many on their deck. I think they had 4 Line Lashers. Wow, their hand is terrible. What's this thing called? Thought Stalker Warlock. That's the card I was worried about. I like this card, Cruel Claws Heist. I actually made a deck. I was trying to use that. They have 2 Restless Cottages. I guess this commits crimes, that's why it's in their deck. Makes sort of amount of sense. So given the contents of their hand, this is one of those spots where obviously like Restless Reef is not going to do anything to animate it really. And I'm just going to... my Jaces are just going to be measured for 15s. That'll be plenty good. Ooh. Going after the clues. Doesn't seem like it's very likely to be effective. I could keep a land in my hand to pitch to 3 steps ahead. I think we were kind of past the point where it can manage what I do. I don't think the deck has the tools to dig out of this situation.
Kapask, Imasahak. In time, nothing could be more vulnerable than your
Maybe it
men.
didn't make sense to just do that right there, because I could have milled a Ruthless Negotiation. That would have been pretty bad. thing that's a little bit awkward, which does not matter in this situation at all, is that for the purposes of collecting evidence, 3 steps ahead only counts as 1. Messed up. Should have taken the Thought Stalker Warlocks. That was definitely the scarier card for them to draw. So they're down to 18 cards left in their library, which means that Jace isn't quite a one-shot if I draw it, but it would be enough for sure. I want that 3rd land. Oh, one of the prowess cards. This is definitely the kind of matchup where if you're going to play your removal spells, a lot of the times you want to play them on your own turns so that you don't get hit by either Snakeskin Veil type cards, or I guess they're probably mono red, but I don't want to cut down and have them in response to double shot me. Maybe they're going to counter what they play, or I'm just going to draw 2 and discard. Fish for lands. I guess I actually need play Jace and have it die to be able to afford to totally cover up. Drawn too many copies of 3 steps ahead. It's not very good in this matchup. So I think my life total is probably getting too low. To exile 5 cards to collect evidence is rough. Oh, they have a Forge in their hand? Yeah, I'm not winning this game. Forge is a good card against people who are not interested in doing anything. Alright, sideboard plan versus aggressive red decks. All this stuff comes in. I don't think you need any Jaces, and I don't think Deadly Cover-Up is particularly good. I guess if you wanted to, you could trim some copies of the end for maybe Glistening Deluge. Actually, Glistening Deluge doesn't work because it's just -1/-1. Never mind. Maybe this should be one of the ones that's just like -2/-2 in exile. Maybe I should have 1 copy of that so I could board it in this matchup. Maybe over a Stonebraid. I don't remember what the name of the card is, but it's like black 1, -2/-2 everything, and it gets exiled. It's the new version of Cry of the Carnarium. It's templated slightly differently. So this is the 1/2 combo that I'm looking for. Fabled Passage might wind up being kind of awkward this game. Giving priority indicating that it's about to happen to me. Which artwork of Lightning Strike would I prefer to be hit with? I like that artwork better. I'll leave it for them. This is probably a good enough spot that I'm going to be able to win. I mean, there's going to be like a one-turn window where they could have drawn something. If not, probably fine. This is also one of the spots where Restless Reef is actually not that bad. I don't think we're quite in the spot where I want to start attacking, but it's actually pretty close. They have Monstrous Rage. They have all their Witchstalker Frenzies in their deck still. Which maybe that's not surprising. Not good for the opponent. I could look to see how many forges they have. Not a fan of the sand. Sand much better. Although still not perfect. On land. No. This person has mixed artwork of multiple cards. It's kind of impressive. Need to play a 2-mana card this turn. Hopefully they don't just jam Mirrex Forge this turn. I guess I would actually Long Rivers pull the Forge, so I'm going to let the Swift Spear hit me for 2. This is it's a monstrous roll. Okay. That could have put a dent in my Sheoldred. Alright, let's see if they draw Witchstalker's Fury. Didn't draw a land. Phoenix Chick. Charming Scoundrel that kills me. So close. Alright, well, that was about how that deck goes. I think that probably if you're playing against just straight mono red like that, especially with main deck Restless Forge, you're going to be disadvantaged with this blue-black deck. I think it is pretty good against the black decks. And overall, I think this is like definitely a competitive deck. I've been having a lot of fun with it. The card that I was thinking of, which I don't know why Arena stopped zooming in on cards for me, is Malicious Eclipse. So I think that to make the mono red matchup a little bit better, I'm going to add, let's say 2 copies of this to my sideboard. 1 at the expense of Stonebrain and 1 in place of Glistening Deluge. Because this is, Malicious Eclipse is not quite as good as Glistening Deluge against the white-red deck, but it is still pretty good. And I think against like that just straight up mono red, I would have cut 2 copies of the end for 2 more Malicious Eclipses. Obviously, it's not foolproof. Like, it's not going to take out a Monastery Swift Spear with a roll token on it, but it does kill a bunch of their other stuff. It does kill Monastery Swift Spear if it doesn't grow. It would have dealt with Squee as well. So I think that this is a card that's worth trying against mono red. Anyway, that's the deck. If you made it this far, I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you give the deck a try. Let me know if there's other cards you think belong in this deck, because, like I said at the top, I hadn't played a ton of Standard before this, and while I did skim through basically all the cards that are legal in Standard, it wouldn't amaze me to find out that I'd missed something that would be a good inclusion. So let me know if you have any suggestions. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.